Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. Tonight, we're going to be talking about many things in this live stream. And as usual, I'll open the space up for the community afterwards. So we're going to be talking about the second devastating day in South Lebanon from Israel, which was the most intense day when it comes to attacks and casualties from the Israeli side. And we're going to be talking about the satellite images that confirm that Iran targeted indeed the Nevatim base very heavily, and what that means when it comes to Israel. We're also going to be talking about the updates from Gaza and what's happening there, the potential response and the tone that we're having from the United States and Israeli officials about the prospect of a response, and a couple of other things that we'll be talking about in this video. But before I begin with the main topics, I wanted to also talk to you about a couple of details here. Okay? So we had a couple of reports. One of them was Boris Johnson. Apparently he published a book, and in his book or memoir, biography, whatever it is, he claimed that his bathroom was bugged after Benjamin Netanyahu visited his bathroom. So let's see this this piece of news here. Boris Johnson claiming that Israel bugged it. Okay. Boris Johnson has claimed when I tell you what I've got to tell you, you're going to laugh with me as well. A listening device was found in his personal bathroom in the Foreign Office after Israeli the Prime Minister Netanyahu used it. So not only Israel is bugging everything and controlling everything when it comes to Britain. You know, Zionism is so well embedded in Britain, and we even had this undercover program from Al Jazeera, I think it was in 2018, about the Zionist lobby and their infiltration and how they were trying to affect Jeremy Corbyn's campaign. But that's not enough. They want to bug the toilets too. In his new book, Unleashed, Boris alleged his security team found a bug in the toilet after Netanyahu used the facilities during a visit in 2018. Boris wrote, Thither Bibi repaired for a while. And it may or may not be a coincidence, but I am told that later, when they were doing a regular sweep for bugs, they found a listening device in the Thunderbox. Boris was asked about the claim by the Telegraph, to which he replied, I think everything you need to know about that episode is in the book. They're saying here it's not clear if Israel responded to the claims, but they did respond. Benjamin Netanyahu's office responded to the report that Johnson is saying that in his book, and his office said that it's baseless, the claim is baseless, and it's absurd. It's baseless and it's absurd. But Boris Johnson is claiming that his bathroom was bugged. And I was wondering, what did they want to listen to Boris Johnson talk about in the bathrooms? I was thinking, is he doing a number one or a number two? Or do they want to listen to the intensity of the poo of Boris Johnson? What he ate before, what he ate after. Or is he going to have a rant maybe in the toilets? Anyway, that was the first bit of news that I want to share with you. Israel basically spying on ex-prime minister's poo. The ex-British prime minister's poo. And then we have more responses coming from the world about Iran's attack. We have criticism, lots of criticism for Iran, and this criticism is coming primarily from the G7. And in case you don't know, G stands for genocide. So the genocide 7 countries, the countries who support genocide, they released this statement here. We, the leaders of the G7, express deep concern over the deteriorating situation in the Middle East and condemn in the strongest terms Iran's direct military attack against Israel, which constitutes a serious threat to regional stability. Now stop here for a second. We're not going to go into the hypocrisy and the fact that they are the G7, the genocide 7 themselves, but constitutes a serious threat. They couldn't say constitutes a violation of anything. Do you know why? Because the attack was perfectly legal. In accordance to Clause 51, the UN Charter, Clause 51. What is it called exactly? UN Charter 51 clause that basically protects the countries and gives them the right to self-defense. Okay? Because UN Charter Article 51. This is what I want to tell you about. Why? Because every country has the right to conduct a military attack against another country if it is attacked militarily. And so far, the attack from Iran on Israel was a conventional attack. It's not an unconventional attack so far, meaning that they only attack military locations and things to do with the army. Whereas, of course, Israel and the Genocide 7, the G7, they are doing everything. Everything is unconventional. They do all of the spying, they do the brainwashing, they do the propaganda, they do the psyops, they use illegal weapons, they target civilians, they target civilian buildings, healthcare buildings, they kill people in tents running away from bombs. So all of the awful stuff, they're doing it. But Iran is not doing that. They only had a conventional attack against Israel and its military targets. Now, when it comes to these military targets, Iran, on the night of the attack, they claimed that they took down 20 F-35 jets. How did they know? Well, they targeted the hangars in the Nevatim base, and now we have a confirmation, satellite confirmation, about them attacking the Nevatim base and the hangars. For those of you who don't know what the hangars are where they house and protect the fighter jets. And we had a couple of websites publishing the images of these attacks from Iran, satellite imagery. I'll share one of them here with you. So if we look at this here, these are the hangars. This is where Israel houses its F-35s in the Nevatim base. And of course, we had other locations where it was targeted. But as you can see clearly, this place is completely in ruins. Okay, we have a couple of either airplanes or jets missing from these areas too. I'm not sure if Israel dragged some of them due to damage that has been done. But this is the first big piece of evidence that the Nevatim was hit really hard. And a couple of analysts to do with the military, they also said that Iran could have used certain things in their warheads that have explosions that go wider than, rather than actually create big craters like where they also attacked in other locations in Israel. Could be true, could not be. I mean, I'm no expert when it comes to that in particular, but the damage is evident. This is where Israel houses its fighter jets, including the F-35s, that they conduct their genocide from, and there is satellite confirmation that they have been attacked. They have been attacked heavily by Iran. So they can deny as much as they like. The fact of the matter is, they landed, they hit them really hard, and Israel is deterred to an extent. Not fully deterred, but now slightly deterred. A full deterrence will not come unless Israel is met with the same level of violence it inflicts on the other side, on the innocent civilians. So long as it doesn't face that, and they don't feel the same level that they're inflicting on others, I'm not sure that they will be fully deterred. That it could happen, you know, a level of deterrence that might work, but so far they're continuing. That's the thing. When it comes to these attacks from Iran, they deter them for a bit, but then they again continue and try and do something else. Why? Because the G7, the Genocide 7, support Israel, right? And they condemn Iran, and they continue instead of saying thank you, Iran, for targeting the terrorist bases where Israel conducts its genocide from. You should be thanking them. The only person I heard who was like saying Iran, you know, did what it did and they have the right to do it was the president of Venezuela, Maduro. Again, in accordance to UN Charter, Article 51. It's very simple. But of course, the G7, with the Genocide 7, they support genocide. And now we have more talks about this response. What's going to happen? Is Israel going to respond heavily? Are they not going to respond heavily? What is the United States doing? Are they trying to convince them to avoid or not to avoid? All right. Firstly, the Israeli ambassador to the UN said that we have many options. We have many options and many ways to attack Iran. And the Wall Street Journal, based on Israeli officials, they said, we do not intend to turn the invasion into a wider ground war. That's in Lebanon. Our aim is to reach a ceasefire agreement that will include a withdrawal of Hezbollah and disarming them. This is coming with the reports that Lebanese officials, I think it was the foreign minister, said that actually Israel and Lebanon reached an initial agreement for a 20-day ceasefire that would include Lebanon and Gaza, because Lebanon and Hezbollah refused to cut the ties with Gaza. So therefore, any ceasefire that would happen with them has to simultaneously include Gaza. But after that, 2 days after, Benjamin Netanyahu declared that he does not accept it, and he went and assassinated NASRALLAH. So they start to claim that they want to do something, but then they go against it. Typical treacherous behavior from Israel. This is what they always do. Now, when it comes to the response on Iran, the main things we should know here is compare what happened in April. After Iran's big blow on Israel, there was a small minor attack, and I think it was northeast Iran, that Israel did not take responsibility for, and it was very minimal. And Israel did not, again, they did not say that we did it. So it went by. And at the time, the Americans said we will not participate with any attack on Iran coming from Israel's side, but we will only help to defend Israel. Now, it's important to listen to both what the Israelis are saying and what the Americans are saying. So Israel says we have many ways. Initially, they said we will respond harshly. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, before he had a speech to the Iranian people, your regime and what they're doing is bad. But US officials and what they say is important. So an official source from the United States, they told Al Jazeera that Biden was clear that we do not support an Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. We advise Israelis to avoid an attack on Iranian infrastructure, including oil fields. Our military advisors ask the Israelis to consider our military capabilities in the region in their response to Iran. We urge the Israelis to avoid an all-out war in their response. The Israelis should consider the timing and scale of the response. I mean, all of these statements, absurdity again. Not surprising, of course, because the US is Israel, Israel is the US, and these countries supporting Israel are like them. But they want to avoid a bigger war. They want to avoid a bigger war. Why? Because they know that Iran will be hitting Israel really hard. Iran said we will respond in a violent manner, indicating that they almost didn't respond in a violent manner on the 1st of October. It was like light. And we will target all of your infrastructure in Israel. If they target all of the infrastructure in Israel, it disables Israel. The deputy foreign minister in Iran said that if Israel conducts any mistakes in attacking our interests, we will respond immediately in a very sharp manner. Again, violent, sharp. The IRGC said the infrastructure will be attacked, saying all of these things. And when it comes to the latest visit that the Iranian president had to Qatar, that apparently also included a message to the American government. Iran sends message to Washington via Qatar. An Iranian official source told Al Jazeera that Tehran sent a message via Qatar confirming the end of the period of self-restraint following the Iranian missile strike that targeted Israel on Tuesday evening in response to the assassination of Hezbollah Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in an Israeli raid, and the assassination of the head of the political bureau of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, on Iranian territory. The region is awaiting an Israeli response to the Iranian strike amid fears of an expansion of the conflict in the region. The source told Al Jazeera, we confirmed in our indirect messages to Washington that the phase of unilateral self-restraint has ended and that individual self-restraint does not secure the requirements of our national security. The Iranian official pointed out that the message confirmed that any Israeli attack would be met with an unconventional response that would include infrastructure. So we were talking about conventional and the fact that this attack was conventional. The next one will be unconventional. The Iranian message, according to the official, addressed the regional necessity to curb the Zionist entity and its unbridled madness. At the same time, he stressed that the indirect messages to Washington makes clear that Tehran does not want a regional war, but the Zionist entity must be practically deterred. And then they continued to describe the attack. So the Iranians are clear. We practice self-restraint. Some people said that the lack of Iranian response immediately after the assassination of Haniyeh led to Israel escalating further. But from an Iranian perspective, they viewed it as a window to give the Americans some time to try and reach somewhat of a solution. But clearly, and I'm not sure if Iran did this knowingly or unknowingly when it comes to the true nature of the American administration, the US administration in the region, and Israel, or as a show to the world, more than them really knowing the true nature of the United States and Israel. Because, why would you believe them? And you know very well that they are working hand in hand with Israel. They are supporting this genocide fully, facilitating, supporting, arming, diplomatic cover, not using any genuine leverage, only talks, only theater. I think they knew, but I think, in my opinion, the Iranian government wanted to show that they did actually give some time to the peace process, or what was called the negotiations. And of course, nothing happened. But now the period of self-restraint ended, according to Iran. And afterwards, if Israel attacks them, they will have an unconventional attack on Israel. They're being very clear and very serious about this. And Israel is so far delaying. So some people thought that we would have an immediate response on Iran. That hasn't happened yet. But Israel is still saying that we will attack. We want to go now to Lebanon. In Lebanon, we had another massive day full of activity from the Hezbollah fighters against the Israeli invaders, or against the attempted invasions. 28 operations until 7 p.m. against invasion attempts and attacking settlements. The rate of the attacks intensifies. Most of the attacks are inside of Israel. Hezbollah confirms today they killed 17 IDF troops. Israel confirmed that in yesterday's attacks, a captain from the paratroopers unit in Brigade 202 was killed. Hezbollah's missiles reached Haifa suburbs today, and Israel confirmed that they intercepted some of them, meaning others landed. There's a lot of censorship, so you won't see much of that happening in Israel. In total, Hezbollah launched 200 missiles today only on Israel. Again, Israel intercepted some, meaning some landed. Israel is suffering tremendous losses in Lebanon, and the Israeli defense minister was quoted saying, "We are suffering very big losses, but these losses are required for us to live safely on our land." Hezbollah also released today a video of their attack on Galilot, and the 8,200 unit base.
ايوه
Excuse me, I realized my audio was muted. So that was the attack that we had from Hezbollah on the 1st of October on the Galilot base and on the Mossad base as well. And of course, they still had missiles launched at Israel today, and Israel is suffering very heavily. They're covering up a lot when it comes to the attacks, but again, they're saying, you know, hard days, the same tone that we heard like when they used to suffer grave losses when it comes to Gaza. And again, the Israelis have no answer. They have no answer to Hezbollah, and all of that is happening just hundreds of meters within Lebanese territory, some of them. So Israel is invading partially in a very limited manner. They are immediately being expelled from Lebanon. And when we talk about the actions from the Hezbollah fighters, you're talking about ambushes, direct confrontations, missiles, and all sorts of explosive devices against the Israeli forces. They detonated a building in a commando unit yesterday. And today they had a record number. Yesterday there were reported to be approximately 27 attacks. Today we had 28. And we also had an attack from Gaza. And that attack that came from the armed wing of Hamas, Al-Qassam brigades, they said it is dedicated to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. They dedicated this attack to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and it was a very large attack. And I will be sharing some of the details of this attack with you. That was in Khan Yunis. So we had this report in Al Jazeera. Al-Qassam broadcast footage of a complex ambush against Israeli forces, Israeli occupation army. Israel has one of the largest armies in the world, especially in terms of military equipment. It relies on massive military power to maintain its influence in the region, benefiting from significant American financial support. Okay, what does that have to do with it? Oh no, did we go to another page? Hold on a second. Let's see if that's the same page that I was... yeah. Here we go. It's this one. Al-Qassam broadcast footage, and they said Al Jazeera broadcast exclusive footage of a complex ambush carried by Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of the Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas, against Israel occupation army east of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. Qassam said its elements carried out the complex ambush less than a kilometer from the dividing line with Israel and Fakhari area east of Khan Yunis. Now, for those of you who don't know, Israel is trying to have these areas in Gaza, dividing areas strategically to have certain buffer zones and also prepare not only to cut Gaza in half, but for future settlements. Don't think that this settlement thing is gone. No, it's still there. The scenes showed various types of Israeli vehicles on fire and Al-Qassam fighters sieging military equipment in the ambush, which was called Renewing the Pledge and Allegiance. Al-Qassam said it was carried out in 3 stages, and its first stage included targeting an engineering vehicle, a Merkava 4 tank, and a D9 military bulldozer. The second phase included targeting a Merkava tank, 2 armored personnel carriers, 2 D9 bulldozers, and detonating a minefield in an engineering force, while the third phase targeted the Merkava 4 tank and 2 D9s. Al-Qassam field members said the ambush came in revenge for the blood of the martyrs and everyone who stood in Gaza. And he specifically mentioned the Secretary General of the Lebanese Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who was assassinated by Israel. These are some of the images from the ambush itself. I'll share some parts of it here.
نثأر لكل شهدائنا الأبرار لكي يعلم الله عز وجل سوف نثأر.
وين الثاني؟ باقي الجرافة جاي علينا. هاي شنو جنبيها شنو؟ الحق 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 صور صور. بسم الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما رميت إذ رميت ولكن الله. بسم الله. الثانية والله غير الثانية إن شاء الله. بسم الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
ننتظر إشارة الآن من إخواننا في الرصد والمتابعة بإذن الله عز وجل.
بك الله ابراهيم. الله
بسم
اكبر.
الله. الله أكبر.
الله اكبر. الله اكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الله اكبر.
So this was the video that Al Jazeera shared for the attacks from the Al-Qassam fighters today in Gaza. Again, that was a complex ambush in Gaza, and the Al-Qassam fighters, they dedicate this to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Meaning, of course, what do we understand from all of this? Firstly, when it comes to Lebanon, they're facing more problems than they probably thought they would face. And again, I mean, I'm not sure. There is a very high likelihood that the people who made the decision to invade Lebanon are very delusional based on the previous experience that they had in Lebanon and the tremendous attacks that they suffered in Gaza. And this is a proof that they are still suffering greatly when it comes to Gaza. But in Lebanon, you're talking about the 2 first days of serious attempts to try and get into Lebanon with such heavy blows. But it doesn't seem like that's making them change their decisions. The only things we heard from Israel, and again, that could be a tactic for them to lie. They always lie. But they're saying we're not looking for a massive ground operation. However, they said the same thing when it comes to Gaza. Initially, it started off as something very limited. Then they went in deeper and deeper. They said we're going to finish the campaign in the north. The command base is in Al-Shifa Hospital. Then it started to be Khan Yunis. And then they said we need to control Rafah. And this is how it went. And the same is planned with Lebanon. However, the calculations are very, very flawed because they are suffering heavily when it comes to Lebanon and when it comes to Gaza. And what they're doing in Lebanon, by the way, yesterday I posted on the community tab an attack in a medical facility closer to the central areas of the capital, Beirut, meaning they're expanding further into Beirut, not just the southern suburb of Beirut, which is considered to be the main Hezbollah hub. Although, of course, civilians live there, normal citizens in Lebanon, and not all of them are aligned with Hezbollah. And this came approximately 4 hours after the US administration said we heard from the Israelis that they're not planning to continue an attack inside of Beirut. However, Iran, again, Israel, lies after lies. They constantly say that they don't want to do more, but they constantly expand and dig in further. A couple of more things. Firstly, we had a statement coming from the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Some people, and of course, the propaganda and the people who are always anti-Iran and the people who always want to instill division between Iran and the resistance fronts. It's understandable, of course, because Iran is the only country that outright supports the resistance openly and has open declarations. But people used to say that, the Iranian president Pezeshkian is not really into that. He wants to deal with the US and what have you. But today we had a statement from him. We had this statement coming from the Iranian president Masoud Pezeshkian. Iran reaffirms support for Palestinian resistance at Doha summit. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian reiterated Iran's commitment to supporting Palestinian resistance movements during his address at the Asia Cooperation Dialogue Summit in Doha on Thursday. Pezeshkian emphasized that Iran views it as a duty to back groups fighting for the liberation of Palestine. And this is something we've been saying all along, that Iran has it embedded in them that they support the liberation of Palestine ever since the revolution in Iran, before something like Hamas or Hezbollah even existed. We will continue to support the Islamic resistance movements for the liberation of Palestine and consider this a fundamental responsibility, Pezeshkian declared, affirming Iran's unwavering stance on the issue. Speaking to an audience of regional leaders, the Iranian president also highlighted the ongoing challenges in West Asia particularly repeated Israeli aggression against the axis of resistance. We are standing firm in our support for the axis of resistance. Pezeshkian added, underscoring Iran's alignment with groups opposed to Israeli atrocities in the region. And then they continued talking about him and his visit to Qatar. Again, highlighting that the Iranian president is indeed supportive. He had declarations in the beginning. He met the Hamas leader. I think it was on the day of his inauguration or the day after he was assassinated. And he also spoke with the late Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah as well. And now he's reaffirming this again. Yes, you still have some people saying that no, the president is not, and Iran, and some people are also to this day saying that it's some sort of a joke. Again, why? Because you need to have this propaganda, firstly, because Iran is the country with the most support for these movements. Secondly, some people are blinded by their ideologies when it comes to Iran. They have problems with Iran, either racially or sectarian problems, or of course, when it comes to the Israeli supporters, problems when it comes to their independence, the fact that they are an independent state and they do not bow down to the United States administration and its hegemony attempts across the world. And the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and then I'll open the space up for all of you, and thank you for being patient, is the reported attack near a Russian base in Syria. This is a very important and dangerous development. Israel strikes near Russian airbase in Syria amid broader regional bombing campaign. Israeli forces have launched a series of airstrikes on multiple targets along the Syrian coast, including areas near Russia's Humaymim base in western Syria, according to the reports. Syrian and Russian air defense systems were reportedly activated to intercept the incoming projectiles, but the strike still landed in the vicinity of the city of Jabli, causing extensive damage. It remains unclear if any specific installations were directly targeted, though sources have speculated about a possible attack on a Russian ammunition depot. Syrian media reported that Israel bombed Russia's Humaymim base in Syria in an hour after the Iranian Qeshm Airlines plane had landed. The attack targeted military sites in the Latakia province, or Latakia, including a warehouse inside Humaymim base, but it did not damage the runways or control towers at Humaymim or Latakia civilian airport. The bombardment from 3:55 to 4:41 a.m. reportedly involved 30 missiles launched from naval ships. Afterward, the Russian air patrol was seen over Latakia, surveying the area. I wanted to stop at here, from naval ships. Israel has been launching more strikes from naval ships after the Iranian attack. And again, that could be directly linked with the fact that they had a serious impact against their air force. But there's another explanation to this here, the air defenses. They probably wanted to avoid air defenses. But with the images coming from the satellites and the confirmation that the Nevatim was hit very heavily, Israel, one of Israel's main air force bases, their army's bases, including the hangars where they house and protect the F-35s and other fighter jets, it's clearly having an effect. And no wonder Benjamin Netanyahu looked the way he looked at the time. Unconfirmed reports suggest that the Humaymim airbase was targeted due to its alleged recent use by the IRGC Quds force to send weapons to Syria for delivery to Hezbollah. The Islamic Resistance Telegram channel reported that Syrian air defense systems actively confronted enemy targets in Latakia, Jabli, and Tartus for over 40 minutes. The channel claimed that several shells were intercepted near Humaymim, the location of a Russian airbase. It further stated that more than 50 shells were shot down with the support of the Russian military. The latest escalation is part of a broader campaign by Israel, with airstrikes now reported in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. Israeli jets are said to be carrying out these coordinated strikes across the region, intensifying conflict that has persisted despite recent attempts of de-escalation. And they're mentioning here similar incidents previously with the 13 Israeli missiles during an attempted strike on Tartus, a coastal city of strategic importance to Russia due to the presence of naval logistics base. Now, when it comes to, firstly, Israel, one thing that is noteworthy to mention here, Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that we can reach any target everywhere across the world. And he also said that we will carry out attacks in the Middle East, meaning you have a country that is committing a genocide confirmed by the ICJ and a war criminal threatening with further escalation regionally and globally, not even specifying names of countries. When you say the Middle East, you include every country in the Middle East, whether you have good relations with them or not. Secondly, when you mean the world, that means you're a threat to the world. You're a security threat to the world. And again, Israel's allies, they turn a blind eye. Again, condemning Iran, instead of congratulating them for attacking bases that are used to commit crimes against humanity and a genocide. This is what the US and NATO claim to be doing in other parts of the world when they see fit and when it's suitable for the United States and its foreign policy and against states that the United States does not like and wants to have under the thumb. When it comes to this escalation with Russia, it is very serious and dangerous, again. But it's not only restricted to Israel. These specific attacks, when it comes to Russian bases and bases important to Russia, that's not only linked to Israel, that's also linked to the United States. The United States and NATO have been enabling their little puppet, Zelensky, to attack further into Russia. Now he's asking them to allow him to attack deeper into Russian territory, nuclear facilities. Again, escalating and behaving recklessly with a country that possesses nuclear weapons. This attack had to be coordinated with the United States. Because if you talk about an attack on Russia, and Russia is indeed supporting and collaborating with Iran, and there have been reports that they even had military drills with Hezbollah forces in Syria. You're talking about a potential Russian intervention and Russian participation. Not that there wasn't previously. I mean, Russia has been expanding its forces and its bases in Syria that are closer to Israel that could potentially be used in the future in case, everything spirals out of control, because Russia and also China, for that matter, they view Israel as the United States. They don't view Israel as, like an own independent entity. They know that Israel is the extension of the United States of America. But the fact that Israel is doing this now is proving that this country is behaving even more and more recklessly. They haven't been deterred to a level sufficient enough to stop their recklessness because of the enablement that is coming from the countries that support them, primarily the United States. Because when you talk about all of the other countries, if you talk about the EU, the NATO, and the G7, the Genocide 7, all of them fall under US influence. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you. And of course, with all of these developments, we're at more risk of further escalation. Now, people are saying, will this lead to a regional war? I think we're already in a regional war, because if you say regional war, what do you mean? More countries participating in the Middle East, for example? Who's going to participate? Jordan? Jordan are intercepting missiles from Iran going to Israel, hurting Jordanians in the process, meaning that they prefer Israeli lives over Jordanian lives. Secondly, who? Saudi Arabia? When we talk about regional war, you talk about the countries that are most likely to interfere. And the next levels of escalation, you could potentially be talking about Egypt. But again, with Egypt, Israel is shifting the focus now to Lebanon. There's no talk about progress in Gaza now. The only potential progress that we had was these reports that Israel was willing to have a 3-week ceasefire that would include Lebanon and Gaza, but that's nothing when it comes to the long-term solution. The long-term plan for Israel is complete control over the Middle East. And in that plan, they are being backed completely by the United States and its proxies. They will allow Israel to expand as much as possible. In the beginning, they were planning to expel the people from Gaza to Sinai as a pretext to go against Egypt and control Sinai again, potentially expand further. Now they're threatening everyone in the Middle East and everyone in the world. So in Benjamin Netanyahu's vision, he's looking at the greater Israel in the region, supported, of course, by the United States. And the countries that even consider themselves to be neutral and not doing anything, they are at risk as well. And let me open the space up for you. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. Let's see your comments. If you have any comments, by the way, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them for me so I can view them. Highlighting them or adding like a red point or something. And thank you everyone who sent supers. Bob Marston, Stephen Burrows, and Bob Marston again. Bob Marston is saying, when you think it could not get any worse, overnight, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, the IAF, or the Irgun Air Force, nice, bombed 3 Russian support bases in Syria, knocking out several ammo dumps at the bases that are located in Latakia, Tartus, and Jabli. Yes, of course. Yeah, we just spoke about that. Again, recklessness being enabled by the countries that support Israel. That's the problem that we have here, is that they are enabled by the United States. Countries are very quick to condemn Iran for carrying out a fully legitimate attack, a very well calculated attack on Israel and its military bases that are committing a genocide. And it's escalation after escalation, like what they're doing in Europe, and of course at the expense of the people, and with the risk of having an all-out war now. What else is there to it? Do you understand? And the Russians from their side, even the Chinese, when it comes to the Southeast China Sea, they're practicing a lot of restraint. And they are being the reasonable side. And they are nowhere near as hostile as the US and NATO. And thank you for that, Bob Marston. And you added that, Bob, as well. Yes, and we had other reports too. Thank you so much for that. And of course, Stephen. Who else do we have? Studio Rainer as well. Thank you for your super. And Khalid Razak as well. Studio Rainer saying we cannot be hypocrites. The US made Israel because they've always been anti-Semitism. No more saying Israel it's not enabled, it's the US. It is the United States, yes. Of course, the counter argument is the Zionist control over the US, but again, that's the US for you. If they did not give Israel all that it needs to conduct these crimes, they wouldn't have. But the United States is enabling and is continuing to enable. They're not stopping. Unknown human, do you think Israel and its supporters will risk escalation in the region by attacking Iran directly in retaliation? Well, of course, Israel wants to attack Iran, but it appears to be that there is US pressure not to escalate things to a level where it can reach a broader war or a larger full-scale war, constant back and forth attacks. There is an argument that this could work. Why? Because to an extent it has worked in April. Israel wanted to attack Iran heavily, but the United States told them that you don't attack them in a very big manner that will require them to respond again. And we had these fireworks in northeast Iran. Now they're saying, have a limited strike, don't do anything to target their nuclear facilities or the oil facilities or even serious infrastructure. There were signs that Israel was trying to legitimize an attack that would not include necessarily the nuclear facilities or the oil facilities, although this is the golden opportunity for Benjamin Netanyahu to attack them. Because on the night of the attack with Iran, we had two reports, one of them saying, we don't have to attack their nuclear facilities. The other said, no, we don't have to attack their nuclear or oil facilities. Then we had another report from an Israeli official saying that our attack could be in a way where it doesn't involve airstrikes. So it could be deception, because war is full of deception, but they could be also taking a step back, because don't forget this attack that happened 2 days ago. It was a massive attack. It's not like something light. Let's not underestimate it. And even mainstream media outlets who portray themselves to be in more support, of the Palestinian cause and what have you, they have elements of undermining. It's not surprising because, of course, the countries that support them, these mainstream media outlets or the people in power, they don't want to portray themselves as doing nothing. And, Iran is the country that's coming out to attack Israel, the only country that has the guts to attack Israel. It needs to be underplayed from their perspective. And of course, from an Israeli and US perspective, the underplaying comes as part of the campaign to undermine, to justify a smaller scale attack from response or complete no response from Israel. That could happen. Juror number 6, any news on Gallant? See, that's the interesting thing. They're releasing statements on him. He said, but I haven't seen him. I really haven't seen you off Gallant. We had claims that he was killed. Nothing. And listen, now we have this escalation. First time since the second Intifada. So the first time since 24 years, an Israeli fighter jet attacked in Tul Karim. 18 people killed. meaning they're using fighter jets in the West Bank now. You see, they are only escalating. This is Netanyahu's plan. Start with Gaza, go to Lebanon, go to the West Bank, and then go to the other countries too, Syria. Because in Lebanon, look what their plan is. Of course, they're not going to accomplish any of them. And the reason for my confidence is the fact that they failed miserably previously, and they are trying to do it again now without any proper calculation and with the opposing side being much stronger than before. So it's not like baseless, but their actual plan is as follows. What they really want: completely destroy Gaza and ethnically cleanse the population. Have a population transfer in Lebanon, populations that are more aligned with Hezbollah. Don't forget, we have 1 million now who fled their homes. Transfer them potentially to Iraq or other countries. They go from the south of Lebanon all the way up to the eastern part, up to the Beqa' Valley, and have control on the strategic locations where the resistance in Lebanon gets most of its weapons from. This is the ultimate plan. Then control further parts in Syria, expand the Golan Heights, the Quneitra area, potentially reaching Damascus. With the Palestinians of the West Bank, expel as much as possible, if not all, to Jordan. If problems appear in Jordan, and they always create something, they have control over Jordan. And it goes from there. Then, of course, there's a talk about a government change in Iran and all of these other countries. So they are expanding. And is the opposing side viewing that and realizing what the plan is? Because some people are saying, based on the response that you're having from Iran now and Hezbollah, the attacks are not sufficient to a level where Israel will be deterred. Why? Because Israel is waging an extermination war. Do they know that and they're still choosing a different strategy with them? Perhaps. Or do they not know that? And they're still going back and forth and, countering certain escalations and what have you. I'm more inclined to think that they are aware of the plans. There is a genuine will not to expand things to much higher scales. How effective that would be in the long run, I'm not sure. Because so far, what we have seen is Israel, it's only a matter of time up until the next escalation. Whenever you used to think that they might take a step back, we might have a resolution, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But again, we don't know what happened with Yoav Gallant. I haven't seen him, but there are statements quoted on him. And Ramplan saying the exterior minister of Lebanon said on TV station that Nasrallah made a deal with the US to stop firing Israel. That's why he was confident in Beirut, but they stabbed him and killed him. I heard that report again. Of course, Nasrallah has been assassinated now, so he can't confirm that. But according to that report, it included both Gaza and Lebanon. And why does it have to include Gaza? Because if you have a ceasefire with Lebanon without Gaza, that means Lebanon is a separate front to Gaza, and that's not something that Lebanon or the Lebanese resistance would allow. And again, treacherous behavior from Israel, enabled by the United States. Acting like the United States did not know about this assassination is very naive. And Mind Over Matter saying, if it's true, Again, I don't know. The only thing that I know is that I heard that report based on the foreign minister and his statements. How likely would that be? It could be. If it included Gaza, maybe. Because Hezbollah told them previously, you don't even have to negotiate with us. If you stop the war in Gaza, we will stop attacking you. They repeated that many times. Did all of these countries collaborate with Israel to assassinate Nasrallah? Maybe. Because these countries with Israel, the US, the UK, France, Germany, they're just as genocidal, if not even worse than Israel, at an establishment level, at a governmental level. They support them heavily. And they're very influenced by the Zionist lobbies. And I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted him gone. And they tried to play this theater with Israel and continue as if nothing happens. Otherwise, why wouldn't they condemn Israel after they did that? Or tell Israel, look, we almost reach a ceasefire, and then clearly they're with them. TMZBGD, seeing the IOF's losses, do you think that America will directly get involved to save face for Israel, risking a bigger escalation? Well, we had confirmed reports that the United States deployed more people in the Middle East, thousands. I'm not sure who these people are. Who is brainwashed to a level where they go and be deployed to serve and protect a genocidal entity? You need to be really, really brainwashed. But them fighting on behalf of Israel, we haven't seen that yet. Doing stuff to legitimize, support Israel and defend Israel, we have seen that. But fighting on their behalf, I haven't seen that yet. Why? Because Israel is saying we're in an existential war. There were talks about coalitions in the beginning. That didn't happen. And the tone coming from, well, the countries that even support Israel started to become less and less motivated after Israel broke the temporary ceasefire. Because listen, an all-out war in the region does no one a favor. Iran has the capacity to shut down the global economy. They'll close the Hormuz Straits. They will annihilate every single US base in the region. And if they want, they will destroy all of the oil fields in the region too. That's a problem. The US took severe measures after the Saudi government had an embargo on them in the 1973 war, which led to the suspicious assassination of King Faisal at the time, only for the sake of protecting the oil and what they label as, their interests and in general global economy. But the enablement of a terrorist state planted in the Middle East, oppressing other people, promoting hatred and racism and based on supremacy, that doesn't help the cause, does it? So if you want stability, again, the solution is extremely simple. It's very straightforward. Implement a government. Firstly, dismantle Zionism and apartheid Zionism. Implement full equality between the Jordan River to the sea, where everyone can live in peacefully and equally. And de-escalate. Why? Because Israel is the main cause of all of these escalations. And that's from 1948. That's not from just the recent escalation. But again, Western powers prove time after time that in the case of the Middle East, in the case of Palestine, they support racism, they support supremacy, they support oppression, they support genocide. They go against every single human right that they claim to be protecting and defending and promoting across the world. And that is only escalating things further. And Verlith, thank you so much for that. They got Sayyid Hashim. What do you Hashim Safiuddin, you mean? I haven't heard that. Where'd you get that from? I did not hear that. And there are no reports of that. Studio Rainer, what ongoing conflicts could this conflict be a smokescreen for? I have a feeling the media shows this to distract us from the real issue. Well, listen, I mean, if you're looking for the truth of what's happening, you wouldn't look in the media, really, or at least mainstream media, to be more specific, because mainstream media is propaganda, is a tool to brainwash you and control you and make you misinformed as much as possible and instill fear in you and keep you a slave to protect the interests of the elites. Now, a smokescreen. Well, listen, I personally don't think this is a smokescreen for anything. If anything, I think they would have wanted a smokescreen to cover this, but there was no smokescreen they could come up with. They tried to the best of their ability to cover up the horrific actions of Israel and deny the genocide and pretend like this entity is something normal when it's not normal. It's an apartheid, supremacist, violent, terrorist entity. And they're still covering that up to this day. But they definitely have plans. They have plans. I mean, if there are certain elements that are being reported now during what's happening, is the fact that the United States is actually seeking peace. Or, their calls for ceasefire and de-escalation are genuine. That's the smokescreen. When really and truly they are just as complicit and participant in these crimes as Israel is. And again, to understand exactly what's happening, you wouldn't go to mainstream media. You would try and get your sources directly from the ground, media that is not really mainstream, and from multiple sources as well, including from people who you don't like sometimes, to try and establish an understanding. And Studio, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. Let's go to your next question. Rene Segestes, what happened to Yahya Sinwar? Israel claimed his death after heavy bombing. Well, we had no confirmation from Hamas that he was killed. Israel also previously claimed that they killed MahmoudOD. There was a denial for his killing, but it's not, abnormal for Israel. They claimed that they killed Adif several times before. It became apparent that it was a lie. Even Israel admitted. Yahya Sinwar, also, we have no proof that he was assassinated. We have no proof that he was assassinated. Mahib, salam, brother. You said, do you think Israel may have a nuclear weapon or use a nuclear weapon sometime in the near future? Listen, they've showed their intent. A member of the government, Amichai Eliyahu, his name is, from Jewish Power, the party that Itamar Ben-Gvir belongs to, suggested that they should use nuclear weapons against Gaza. It's fascinating how ill-informed these people are. It's like your forces are in Gaza. Do you want to kill them? But I wouldn't be surprised, a tactical perhaps, a tactical nuclear weapon. But again, the problem is with that. Firstly, it is very dangerous. It needs to be in a location where they technically cannot be harmed. I'm not sure how effective that would be when it comes to stopping the resistance to them. Because don't forget here, they're claiming that they are conducting all of these operations to protect themselves and save themselves without resorting to any genuine diplomatic routes to achieve these so-called or declared objectives of theirs, which is absurd. Usually when it comes to wanting certain political gains, you will try and reach it diplomatically. I mean, this is the way that humanity should at least work at some point in the future. Disputes should be resolved in a diplomatic manner, not in war. But Israel goes the opposite way always, because it's enabled, it has the force, the US supports it, it gets the cover up from the Western powers in general. But the other problem that we have with the nuclear is the fact that once you open the can of nuclear, you don't know where that could reach. You already have a threat of nuclear war in Europe because of all of their aggressive stance or expansionist aggressive stance towards Russia. NATO was supposed to be a defensive organization. It proved to be the complete opposite. It's an offensive organization. They constantly expanded towards Russia further and further. And now you have this war. But if Israel wants to use nuclear weapons, well, you have legitimized a nuclear weapon against you now, haven't you? So there's an argument now that the people opposing Israel or fighting against them are not using anywhere near what Israel is using in terms of unconventional warfare. Some people are saying they're being too moral with them. It's like Israel is slaughtering your children and you are only targeting military bases or security bases or what have you. So, and again, that could change at some point. But if they can at some point use maybe a tactical nuclear, something bigger than a tactical in the case of Iran, maybe. Well, they warned Iran. Look at the audacity. Western powers warned Iran that you might be attacked with a nuclear weapon. And they said that we will retaliate with the same power, not confirming that they have nuclear, but what does the same power mean? They could have a nuclear bomb in their possession, either handed to them or available whenever is required. There are reports that Russia might give them, if they need, a nuclear bomb if they are attacked in a nuclear bomb. So that would potentially start the end of days scenario. The final escalation that would lead to very bad things. We hope we don't reach there, but judging by how much Israel is enabled and supported by the US and its proxies, it wouldn't be surprising. All that we know is we know who started it, and we know who enabled it, and we know who led us to that moment. And thank you, Mahib, for that. Ron S., thank you, said the Gulf states said they will be neutral, no basis. That's not surprising because firstly, they know their vulnerabilities. Secondly, they want to be as detached from the situation as much as possible. I mean, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia was reported, according to Western mainstream media, to say that I personally don't care about the Palestinian case. So they just want to get along with everything without having too much problems. But they know if they have anything. And Iran said recently, if any attacks are conducted against Iran from a certain country, then it will be a legitimate target. So I don't think they'd want to get involved. And look, even with these countries, like even with Jordan, we had a statement from Ayman al-Safadi the other day, the foreign minister of Jordan, where he criticized Netanyahu. Like we're always looking for peace. Netanyahu and Israel, they have an option now. 51 states is referencing to Muslim states, recognizing Israel, having deals with them. If they have a Palestinian state next to them, if they solve the situation, but this one is only leading to like a regional war. And again, Israel shows no regard to countries. Hardly, they're just the two countries that have a peace treaty with you from the Arab states, Jordan and Egypt. Hostile approach against both of them. So the Gulf states would try and be neutral as much as possible. If things escalate to a very large extent, will the US go that far to protect Israel and put all of its bases at risk? It's questionable. So far, they supported, like I said, Israel with what they need, but they haven't reached a level where they fought on their behalf. And they said before that they wouldn't participate in an attack on Iran. And Safid replaced saying, Safid Din, thank you, was targeting Beirut fire belts. Again, I haven't heard that, neither from Israel nor from anywhere else. And if he was, then I think we would of course have a confirmation at some point. And more judgment. Thank you so much for that. Let's take the last couple of questions before we wrap up. The Badger, Salam Mahmoud, do you think the last card to play and goal is to ultimately force the US into an open war? Yeah, I mean, Netanyahu wanted the US to be participating. This is his end game. Get the US in. But there are elements in the United States who realize that. Now, the US, although they support Israel, but they also know that there is a bigger picture. How far are they willing to go for the sake of this genocidal entity? I'm not sure if it's far to a level where they will, engage in an all-out war. But saying all of that, that option is still there. And Nessa, thank you for that. He said, do you think Israel's endgame is to build a canal on bombed land? It was proposed a long time ago. Well, they had this alternative Ben Gurion canal, but if you ask me, their eyes are on the Suez Canal. If they wanted a pretext, if they wanted to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people in Gaza and send them to Sinai, the Egyptian president said at the time they want to do that so that they can bring the Palestinians into Sinai, so that they can have operations being done against them in Sinai as a pretext to attack Sinai. And if they attack Sinai, then they will. Egypt is under threat. So that's their end game. And again, don't be surprised if you see a legitimization from that, from the United States and from some Western countries. After Egypt liberated Sinai, in some Western countries, like in Britain and in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, but primarily some people in Britain were saying at the time that during the British Mandate, not everything was clear when it comes to the sovereignty on Sinai. So Egypt, during the Ottoman Empire, they didn't necessarily have full control over Sinai, meaning, the Egyptian control in Sinai is in dispute. And don't forget, Britain, Israel, and France had an attack on Egypt in 1956. That was later stopped by the US. So the end game is really big now. The end game is to have an Israel expanded in the Middle East with no rival. This is the end game, and this is where they're going to. And I think some people still don't really realize that. But the end game of Israel is to expand and put itself in a position of the exclusive force in the Middle East. Total control. And thank you again, Nessa. Dalshil, are you at all worried about tomorrow's prayer lead by Khamenei? No. I mean, what are they going to do? Go and bomb them? Okay, what if you do bomb them? What's going to happen after that? You wrote your own death sentence. I mean, with the attack 2 days ago on Israel, it was so heavy, and they're already warning them with an unconventional attack if they respond. Imagine them killing their supreme leader. That's it. Rest in peace. Now I'm hearing Axios, based on Israeli reports, Hashem Safiuddin was the target in Beirut. Okay. Let's see. Massive bombing of Beirut suburbs, and Israeli talk about targeting Hashem Safiuddin. They want an all-out war. This is what they're going towards. This is what they're doing. The southern suburb of Beirut was subjected to an Israeli bombing, which was described as more massive than the strike assassinated Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. Jazeera's correspondent said that the Israeli raids in southern suburb targeted several buildings that were completely destroyed. Channel 14 said that the target was Hashem Safiuddin, head of Hezbollah's executive council, potential successor to Nasrallah's party leadership. Two Israeli sources told Axios that he was the target. However, the results of the attack are still unclear. The attack was considered to be the most powerful and severe in terms of destructive force, and the sounds of huge explosions reached areas outside the greater Beirut. Marija area, or Marjia, the heart of the southern suburb. Described the targeting as unusual, similarly to what happened the assassination of Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. We will see. We will see. And again, listen, even if they target him, what is the objective? Again, ask about the objective. The declared objective of this whole assassination campaign against Hezbollah figures is to bring the people back to the north, to bring the Israeli people back to the north. Has Israel increased the likelihood of anyone going back to northern Israel after they assassinated Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah? Or have they done the contrary? They are ethnically cleansing themselves out of Israel and doing everyone a favor. As in telling the Israelis, leave in droves, Israel is not safe for you. They're doing the second thing. If they targeted him, indeed, is that going to bring the people back? No, it's going to escalate things and make things even worse. Right? But worse for them. They are suffering heavily on the borders with Lebanon. They are now being targeted on a regular basis from Hezbollah at a larger scale as part of the day-to-day supporting activities for the sake of Gaza and as a response to the attacks in Lebanon, meaning that with each person you kill or with each top figure you kill, you increase the response. And that is Israel for you. I mean, that is that country. They bloodlust, murder, killing. This is what they're good at. And no vision whatsoever. No vision for the future. Primarily for the Israelis. Another thing here that should be very important for everyone to know. Hezbollah, in particular in their positions in the south, where they target Israel the most, they are organized in a way where they can operate in individual groups detached from central command. Meaning, I don't need to get the order from Hashim Safiyuddin or whoever controls Hezbollah, but I conduct my operations based on the requirements of the field. Meaning, you can kill everyone, and they will have certain groups that will simultaneously work together with an underground communication network that is wired and Israel has no access to, and continue to fight Israel. And when it comes to their missiles, well, firstly, Israel did not harm their missile capability. They are still attacking them day by day and expanding further. Secondly, they haven't infiltrated that as much as they did when it comes to the personnel level. And indeed, it's an infiltration. This is a weak point for Hezbollah when it comes to Israel. And Israel is managing to escalate that further. But the biggest question is, will it achieve their objectives? No. And no, not just wishful thinking. No, by evidence. No, by what's happening on a day-to-day basis. No, by reading the facts. By seeing the progress on the ground. They are not achieving their objectives. Have they achieved their objectives with Gaza? No. What are the declared objectives? Eliminate Hamas, make Gaza not pose a threat, and return everyone. Now, they are justifying Hamas existing in Gaza. They're still a threat. And they've given up the prisoners, the Israelis in Gaza. As a matter of fact, the biggest threat to the Israelis imprisoned are the Israeli government and the IDF. They're being protected by the resistance, and Israel targets them and kills them. But we'll see how that develops. If they are successful in the assassination, I think they will only expand things further. Napwi, they bugged Johnson's toilet because they knew he talks out of his... Probably. Maybe. Still interesting, though, that they bugged his toilet. Perceived reality, you're asking if Israel will do anything foolish against Iran. If Operation True Promise happens, Israel will be on fire. If Operation True Promise 3 happens, Israel can say goodbye to its infrastructure. And if it escalates further, they can all depart. And Siraj, thank you, and everyone else sending supers, much appreciated. Last question. The Digital Orientation Solutions Incorporated. All signs point to developing regional war leading to World War III. Don't you see it that way? I hope I am wrong. Well, there are many signs that we're looking towards an escalation that could potentially lead to a nuclear war. Do I see it that way? Well, I see that there is a big potential for that. And you're saying, I hope I'm wrong. Well, of course, we hope it doesn't happen. But the fact of the matter is you have a criminal state of terror called Israel, supported by a bigger state of terror called the United States, and ex-genocidal entities supporting this last colony of theirs in the Middle East, enabling that, and enabling all of this aggression against Russia as well. So we wouldn't be surprised. And again, like I told Mahib before, when it happens, we know who started it. We will know who started it. That's if we live the day after a nuclear war. And again, we hope that there are, or, again, hopes, based on hopes, people with some sort of rational minds who have power or in powerful positions realize that the key elements here of solving what's happening now is, firstly, get rid of this approach of US hegemony. The United States is no longer the only superpower in the world, and accept the fact that every human being is entitled to equal rights. But so far, we're not seeing hopeful signs. And in the meantime, we will continue reading and listening and seeing and analyzing and praying at the same time. And I hope that elaborates. Thank you so much. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in for another show. Thank you for everyone who participated. And of course, apologies for missing many of the comments. You'll usually miss most of them. Thank you so much for everyone who sent supers. Siraj Napweed, Nessa Nu, More Judgment, Replay, Ron S, Studio Rainer, Verlith, Goldtree, welcome to membership, Studio Rainer, Khalid Razzaq, Bob Marston, Stephen Burrows, and Bob Marston again. I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow. I might have a video after this as well. In the meantime, again, thank you for tuning in. Stay blessed, take care, have a wonderful rest of the evening or night or day, depending on where you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone, and take care.